Welcome to the other side of the coin, where we add new perspectives for you to make more powerful decisions in your financial world. Today's guest is my brother and co-founder, Marc Smith. As the president of I Am Financial, Marc leads the personal planning division, and he is a two-time recipient of the prestigious Forbes Award as top financial security professional, best in state for the state of New York. With about 2 decades of experience guiding clients through complex financial decisions, Marc understands that money is more than numbers. It's about aligning resources with values, vision, and lifestyle goals. His expertise bridges the gap between financial theory and real-life application, making him a trusted advisor for those who want to live well today while preparing for tomorrow. Marc is not only an accomplished professional, he's also a leader inspiring individuals and families to create intentional, long-term strategies for building and preserving wealth. Often, people don't know what they don't know, and it's common for people to follow average mainstream financial planning without even realizing that it's holding them back. I couldn't be more proud working alongside him every day. He's a fantastic co-founder, national speaker, and I'm honored to call him my brother. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce the president of I Am Financial, Marc Smith.
Well, lucky me, I am with 2 Smiths today. After episode 1, I get to double the Smiths. And not only that, but look what I've done here. If you're watching on YouTube, I've grown my beard out so that I could fit in with the family.
Company uniform. I love it. I love it. And I love that we're doing this with you because you are family to us. So.
Oh.
You just got to shave your head.
One step at a time. We're just doing the beard first. But that means a lot to me. It really does. And Marc, I wanna start this conversation with you in a similar fashion to the way I had my last conversation with Zach. And it's interesting because obviously you guys, well, for a longer time you've been on this planet, Marc, but you grew up in the same household. And so I would like to know, we got Zach's flavor of this, but what was your experience of your relationship with money when you were growing up?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. As a kid, I was really fortunate. I never felt like we really were struggling. My parents, for anyone that knows us, we are their top priority. We still are, even in our adult years, and couldn't be more grateful for them. And they would just put us before anything, any of their needs. And so when it came to money, our father, we were growing up, was already an established accountant. Our mother, who stayed home a little bit, but she worked in the Bronx at PS1 as a vice principal, and she was a teacher along the way. And so I never felt a struggle. However, that said, money wasn't just being thrown everywhere. I think our parents taught us to be very conservative with it. And I guess one of the stories that just pops into mind is if we ever went to a toy store or something, and I think this really speaks well to myself and my brothers. It's just like my parents trusted us, and they're just like, if you love something, we'll get it for you. But you don't have to go to the toy store and get something every time either. So I still remember that. Just pops into my head, and I tried to share those values with my children, who it seems like I'm not doing a great job because we still have unopened gifts. So that would never be the case growing up. If we ever had a gift, it was getting opened that day. But fortunately for us, we lived in a nice house, had a strong upbringing at the same time, just great values and well-grounded.
I'm curious what did you study in school? I actually don't think I know this about you.
Other than my time out at night, I studied business. So I knew I was going to do something with money. I was always good at math. I joke about my SAT score. If you look at my verbal versus my math score carried me, probably close to a perfect score there, and then the verbal fell behind. So I was always a numbers guy. My dad was an accountant. I really respected what he did and how he related to the client, and it really wasn't just about the numbers, even though he's very detail-oriented and amazing and super organized, and I take pride in that also. It really was the communication with other people, whether it was inside of work or outside of work. So business and math is right up my alley.
Yeah, Yeah, I'll out myself here. My SAT scores, I still remember them. I got a 750 in math and I got a 570 in. So I reversed the first two digits, almost 200 points apart. So fellow numbers guy, I led with the numbers myself, and as you know, my background is in accounting. So we all speak the language of money in different ways. And Zach told a little bit about the origin story last conversation we had in episode 1. And I mean, if there's anything that feels relevant to you or you want to share about, I guess there's two things that I'm drawn to for places we can start moving towards the like kind of the meat of the conversation. One hand is I would love to know from Marc's perspective what went into creating this business. Like, what felt important to you to running a financial advisor business? What challenges were you looking to solve for your clients that might have not been apparent when you started the business? And then we can kind of get into the strategies, which I know that you excel at.
Hey, Marc was even in the industry and the business before me. I joined him. So he had a few years of figuring it out before our partnership was even arranged, you know?
Yeah, this has only been my only career. I've never had another job, and I don't want to call it a job because it is a career. I guess in the early going, it's tricky. There's a very large learning curve, and just meeting with as many people as possible at the beginning. I think what bode well for myself, and then obviously Zach joined, is just caring and listening and trying to understand what people were looking to do. And it's not just one size fits all. And we were fortunate. We have colleagues, we have mentors, and I think that's just so important in any career. You can't just figure it out on your own day one, which kind of speaks volumes to how we operate now and as we're growing the business and the culture that we're building. But you're not successful day one for sure in this industry, because it's actually for full transparency, behind the scenes, it's twofold our business. It is, especially in the early years, there's the planning aspect to it. And then there's also, you need activity. You need people to talk to. I think one of the struggles is if you're 22 years old and you're trying to meet with people that are 50 years old, there could be a gap there or maybe a lack of confidence. So I think our career is one of the hardest careers. Not that I have many to compare it to, because like I said, this is my only one. But just looking back at the path, and I'm so happy where we are today, but it wasn't easy. And I guess that just makes things even sweeter when it comes to anything. But what a great career, right? We're really helping people. And other than health, there's not much more important than money. And so I don't know if Zach shared with you last time, but our older brother is focused on the health part. He's the smart one, we say. And where we belong also as the math guys, like we said.
I haven't had the good fortune of meeting your brother, but I would definitely push you on he's the smart one, because Marc, one of the things that I most appreciate about you, Zach too is very much an intelligent guy, but Marc, I would have to say that what makes you stand out in this industry to me, your care, like the fact that you welcome me and his family is like that's genuine, and you're like a really genuinely caring person. But there's also there's an understanding of all the different aspects of wealth building on paper that you bring. Like you care so much about understanding the different strategies, and I'm really excited in the next 40 minutes or so to unpack that with you. So if we take a really just ground up approach, and we can start maybe bigger picture, and then we'll zoom in on more specifics, but a ground up approach, and you can feel free to use me as an example, because I was a pretty good example of a ground up client, right? Like I came in not having much of an idea I didn't have a strategy in the beginning. I didn't feel like I had a lot of money put away. So when on the personal finance side of things, when someone is coming to you, they're probably, they're really seeking your guidance on different strategies to implement. And so how do you look at that? How do you support people from a ground up way?
I feel, and this is really just, I think it's flipping everyone's perspective right out of the gate, because most people, when we first meet them, they either think we're like these hot stock pickers, which could be farther from the truth, or it's just all rate of return based. And what we know, and just through the studies, and rate of return is very easy to get. You could simply just open up an account at no fees and just index the S&P 500, and you'll get a rate of return. You'll get 9 or 10% as long as you have the appropriate behavior. And so that's not what planning is. And so from the ground up, and obviously we work on improving rate of return for our clients, but from the ground up, it all stems from cash flow. And a lot of people don't think of it in those terms, but if you keep digging and asking questions and going deeper, what is it all for? Why do you want a rate of return? Why are you saving money? And why are you going to work every day? It's to produce cash flow. And so if all of our planning stems from the foundation of cash flow, I think we really are hitting it on the head. Even if people don't know that they want that when they come into a meeting, when they first meet us, that's why I said we kind of have to flip their perspective to really focus on the core of what they're trying to do as a whole. And that changes the dynamic, and I think it sets the stage for what we deem the appropriate planning.
So this might seem like a really obvious question, but I'm actually not 100% certain. So when you say cash flow, when you're helping someone focus on cash flow, what's specific? Could you bring us a little bit closer to what that looks like?
Certainly. So what I want you to do is imagine life without a paycheck, right? It doesn't work, right? You become a burden, it becomes stressful, you can't do what you want to do. And so I just envision a timeline, and they say at any point in your life, you need an appropriate paycheck coming in. And that's what cash flow is. It starts usually as earned income. Eventually we want to turn it into passive income, right? But it's always income and cash flow, and that's what we're planning for. And so if you're going to build it from the ground up, we really have to start with what can get in the way of you having cash flow at any point in time in your life. So for example, if we're thinking about someone retiring, it's quite possible that they can run out of money if they live too long, right? So we need a solution for each and every threat that exists to someone's cash flow. And the threats are different based on where they're at in life.
Yeah, and also I'll just jump in and say, not only is it the cash flow, but it's how you manage the cash flow, right? So I think there's this misnomer where people think that income is maybe the leading factor for them to be successful or not. But we know people who make, 500, 600,000 or more, and they might be in debt. So once you start logically thinking about it, you know that income is not the answer. It's really how you're managing that income. And to Mark's point, whether you're before retirement or whether you're after retirement, at every single stage of life, if you have the appropriate cash flow, then you're not going to feel some of those financial stresses that other people feel.
Mm-hmm. So there are two things in there. I'm going to throw both out, and then we can see which one feels like a more interesting thread. Passive income is, of course, very important. And you said that the goal is not to just have paychecks coming in, but to also have passive income. So could be helpful to explore that a little bit more deeply. But then also, yeah, to your point, Zach, I also have, maybe I'm not like as familiar with looking at people's finances from what they're spending and what they're bringing in, but I've heard anecdotally from people who make lots of money, even more than hundreds of thousands, millions, who are at a net after all their expenditures and what they've taken out are not really taking anything home. And so would also be curious to hear like how you are supporting people in looking at that. What are the changes that someone could make?
Yeah.
I have other curiosities too, but we'll start there.
I think the latter question is one of the most important questions, because the hardest thing to do for anyone, no matter what your income is saving, right? We could bring all the strategies to the table, but if you can't save money, then there's really not much that anyone could do. And so to allow our clients to do that, we're really changing how they manage their cash flow, which again, someone working, say, 20, 30 years, that's their greatest financial resource. If you do the compound effect on what someone earns over time, it's millions upon millions of dollars. I know some of it has to go to taxes. People have to eat food and enjoy life. But what you're saying is, what is the net? What can they save? And what's great about our approach is we're not here to change anyone's lifestyle. But if we create the right structure, which I can explain how we do that briefly, they can become the best version of themselves as it is for them to save over time. And they can incrementally increase the amount that they save. And we always go into detail with all the fun calculators that we have to prove these points about how rate of savings is more important than rate of return. And so even if you increase your savings rate by 1% a year over a 30-year period, that'll lead to so much wealth. And the rate of return is secondary. Obviously, it's important, but we have to start there.
And the rate of savings is a controllable, right? You can control your rate of savings more than you can control your rate of return. So it's always important to focus on the controllables, control the controllables.
I love that. We do a lot of focus on what you can control, and then just dive in a little bit of how we do it.
Yeah.
People in this country, what they have is, like I said, it's their greatest financial resource, their paycheck, and it's plugged right in to what we find the worst asset that exists is a checking account. Because when money goes in there, that money's so easy to spend. And so why are we directly plugging in your greatest resource into the worst asset? Obviously, I'm not telling people to not have checking accounts, but what we do is we want to put a barrier in the middle, a high yield savings of some sort, and just have your paycheck go into that first, and then figure out what you need or want to live off of every month. And to be totally frank, even if they take all the money out that goes in, it seems like an extra step. It doesn't really matter, because moving forward, if they have a great month or if they get an increase in income or a bonus, that's what's going to get captured in the middle there. And so we're always speaking to our clients and changing how this system will make them unconscious savers instead of unconscious spenders. And so that's structure and manage cash flow for our clients. And we just all the data for them.
And 2 quick points on that I was going to say is, like Mark said, even if all the dollars that they're earning are going into that first stop sign of the high yield savings account before it goes into their checking account, we have a quote, it's actually even on our website, and it says that champions behave like champions before they're champions. And what I mean by that is creating the right mindset and creating the right infrastructure. Even if you're not ready today, you want to start planning for when you will be ready. You don't want to start planning for once you arrive. You want to do it beforehand. And just one other point that I wanted to make based off of Mark's comments, and I was taking some notes here because I don't want to interrupt him and I don't want to forget, is, Mark alluded to this, but I'm going to say it in a little bit of a different way and just shine a light on it for a second. Imagine going to war, and I'm just using that as an example because it's an extreme scenario, but imagine going to war with the best strategy possible. But as an army, you don't have enough troops. Even though you have the best strategy, you still might lose the war. And that's kind of how I view a lot of people's financial plans. Most people, first of all, don't have the best strategies, right? That's something that we're providing to people. But even if they had the best strategies, without the correct cash flow management system, without having enough savings, Mark kind of alluded to this, you're still not going to be successful. So it's like, first you need the reinforcements, then you need the strategy. And that's really what it takes to win.
And that, to double down on that and just view it in a different light as well, to prove the importance of this, being organized is another controllable, right? And so imagine someone, and we see this all the time because we meet people of all different ages. Imagine someone getting to retirement and they already know exactly what they're living off of every month. Whereas someone that doesn't have a system in place, do you know how hard it is to figure out how much they actually need to live off of? Like, I see it. It's every day. And we could just cruise right into a passive income because we know what they need to live off of, as opposed to being disorganized and uncertain. So just creating the system, even if someone's a great saver, having the tools will only make them better.
Yeah. I know we're all Yankee fans here. I always think about, like Aaron Judge, or, he's having a slow start this year, or Juan Soto, right? Just because you're the best at something like they are in their profession, they still use coaches. And I actually find that the people who are most successful, they're the ones who appreciate and want the coaches, right? So even if somebody is successful, being organized, having these strategies, carving out time in their busy lives to sit down and have an accountability partner to focus on what the future holds in their finances, what the future holds in their life. It's all just very valuable. It's just really valuable exercises to implement.
Yeah, and that's why we love so much what you do, Mike, as a coach, because we're such big proponents of it. Like, coaches always add, they add so much. Even if you're a baby, your parents are your coach most of the time, right? Like, think about the track you're on if you were not being taught things. Like, it just advances you faster. It gives you confidence. And so we act as a coach to our clients. We've learned from coaches. We're always learning. I think that's something that's important, just to constantly immerse yourself in whatever you can.
Yeah. And Mike, you and I have spoken about like why people read, right? It's to learn from others. So that's really what it is. Never having an ego, thinking that you know it all, and just trying to get incrementally better, every day.
Yeah, the one reflection, and then we'll see where the question might go, because I have a bunch of things that I'm curious about. But a lot of what you guys are saying is reminding me of the one of the core principles of Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I'm not sure if you read that book or are familiar with the book, but I mean, what you're speaking to
not
is...
Not only did I read that book, I was out to dinner with somebody last night who mentioned that book, coincidentally.
There you go.
Look at that.
Yeah.
A lot of what you're talking about with planning and having a good strategy for retirement and just strategy in general is it's never too late to start implementing your habits. And the results are always a lag indicator of the habits that you choose to have today. And so habits, another way you can look at habits are you making some sort of tiny incremental progress on something that is within your sphere of control, which is a really important... And even being able to discern that, which is another strength that I see in you guys, being able to discern what is in your control and what's not in your control, and then being able to coach people maybe on the insecurities or the fears that come up when things are out of their control, like rate of return start to go haywire as they do. It feels really important. So I wanted to, I don't know, I was just connecting some dots there, that a lot of what you guys are talking about is being consistent, and that these little tiny incremental changes over time, they lead to really incredible results. And I wrote down, Mark, at one point you said rate of savings, or I think it was that rate of savings is more important than rate of return. And which I'm sure a lot of people, on some level, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And on another level, I'm like, I would guess a lot of people are focusing almost solely on rate of return. And so I'm just wondering, how did you guys arrive at that insight? And like, where did you guys get your learner's mindset from? I mean, it's so cool the way that you're always looking to advance and grow and work with coaches. And I think it's a really admirable quality too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we were late to the party on that front. I wish I was that way my whole life. But I think you said something like it's never too late to get started on a little bit of discipline that you could stick to. And typically, I mean, I guess what we're doing for people is figuring out, this is what we live and breathe. So we're figuring out what's most important. And like I said before, if you just keep backing up to it, it always ends up at cash flow. And so we have all the tools at our disposal to not only experiment and figure things out. I mean, we typically explain things from a high level first, and then we just back it up by the numbers, and whether the numbers don't lie. And yeah, I mean, and it's pretty logical, right? If you have someone saving a little bit and they're getting a great rate of return on a little bit is not fantastic. But if you just get a decent rate of return and you continue to build your savings, it compounds just like all these other things, right? And usually with planning, you can relate it to anything in life. We have to start with the simple things. Like, this is very simple to set up a structure to manage your greatest financial resource, your paycheck. And so there's a lot of complex things that we do also. But I think, speaking from the ground up, we always start with the basics. I don't think we should ever skip a step. And I'm a big believer in crawling before you walk and not feeling rushed at any point in time.
Yeah, go ahead, Zach. I have another. I want to push a little bit on one element of this.
Very quickly, I guess I was just going to say how, starting with the fundamentals and the basics, it's so important. One of our other partners, Zach Pomerantz, we actually talk about this all the time. And, I think our company has even soared and taken off more since we've added our partners of Andy and Zach on just like their walks of life and their experiences, what they've brought to the table. But Zach and I, we always talk about Vince Lombardi and how at the beginning of every season, it's like, this is how you tie your cleats. This is how you put on your pads. This is how you block. This is how you tackle. It's like even they, right? Even the Packers, even professional football players, not too good to master the basics. And then you can get more advanced from there.
I love that. Well, one of the really extreme basics is, people say this all the time, and it's like, was it to save money, you just need to make more than you spend, right? And I'm guessing which is kind of silly but also somewhat true. But the thing that I wanted to push on is I'm guessing that there's some level of resistance that people have to needing to adjust their lifestyle. And so if you're meeting with someone who's no matter what income level, it could be 60,000, 600,000, 6 million, if they're spending everything that's coming in, and they're really buried in their own story that they can't let go of these expenses. I have to send my kid to this school. I have to get all of these foods. We have to go out for these dinners. We have to go on vacations, whatever. Is that a challenge that you guys are ever confronted with? And how do you help people identify ways that they can be more cash positive?
I mean, like I said, the goal when we first meet with someone is not to change their current lifestyle. I think if we just set up...
That's their baseline, pretty much what you just described, Mike.
Yeah, that does happen, but I'm not here to tell someone to cancel their Netflix subscription, because I don't even think that's going to change anything. What we need to do, and I feel this way about anything in life, is create the capacity to succeed, or the room. So if we build an environment that'll essentially force them to excel, or help them, guide them to excel without them having to do it on your own. Like, that's why we have all these tools around us. It's that to help us, because we're only human. So it's not really about you need to save today. It's about how can we change things today, not change your lifestyle, but now as you make more money over time, let's make certain that lifestyle creep does not creep up 100%. And it's okay to increase your lifestyle. We tell our clients all the time, but we want you making that decision deliberately, instead of it just happening where you don't even notice it. And it'll be more gratifying that way, I think, too.
And what about, so I'm an interesting case here, and I'm thinking, maybe I'm making an assumption here about the way you're describing it, but someone who's a traditional W-2'd employee, they are going to pretty reliably have a linear path of this year they make this much, and then they make 3% more, and then they make another 3%, and then they get a bit promotion, they make 10% more. I actually, when I started working with you, I was earning more than I'm currently making, because I decided to scale back, and in the process of building a business. And yet, I mean, I guess I'm giving part of the answer here, but for me personally, I think I adjusted my lifestyle to what was most essential, and have used a tool that, I only take in the certain amount of cash, and then everything else automatically gets reinvested. But the question I have is, for clients who aren't as much on the linear path, and maybe they decide, well, I'm actually going to be making $30,000 to $50,000 less this year. Yeah. So how do I adjust for that?
Yeah, look, life is full of changes. It's not that clean. It's not that perfect ever. With a system or without a system, like in your example, you're going to have to make cuts in certain areas. So we're here to talk it out and be supportive. But at the end of the day, you get to choose what gets cut or not cut in that scenario. I mean, I think the importance of building up, there's other goals. It's not just about managing cash flow, right? We want to make certain that if something like that happens, this is another one of those threats I didn't mention, but I was referring to, like when I said in retirement, running out of money is a threat to your cash flow. Well, a threat to your cash flow is, what if you can't work? Or what if you make a little bit less money one year, or a lot less money one year? And that's why we look into everything. We need to make certain you have the appropriate liquidity for those tighter days. And so I think that's another component, another threat to someone's paycheck. And there's not many of them. This is one of the first conversations I have with every client. It's like, what are the threats to your paycheck? It's running out of money in retirement. It's being a poor saver, because that'll make you run out of money in retirement. So we have to focus on that today. It's not having the appropriate liquidity. And then it would be if some health issue popped up that would not allow you to work. And so if we can have a solution just for those few items, handful of items, then we always say our clients can't fail. Because if you have the right strategy and approach and solutions to make certain that can't get in your way, then you'll have the ability to succeed in any scenario. And it actually gives more confidence moving forward. Maybe you take a little bit extra risk somewhere else to increase your return, because you know that downside protection is there.
Yeah, and I'll just even add to that. We're not magicians. Financial advisors aren't magicians. But what I find is, and this is why we take such an educational approach, the more people understand the beast of finances, the more they can make the best decision for themselves, right? There's no magic tricks, but what I find is most people don't even have a strong retirement plan, for example, right? Most people don't know what their retirement strategy is. When I ask people, what's your retirement strategy? What's your distribution strategy? the number one answer I get from people is that they have a 401k, which is a retirement account, not a retirement strategy. So what I always like to point out to people is if we don't know what that retirement strategy is today, whether you're 30 or in your 40s or in your 50s or wherever you are in life, if you don't know how the story ends today, then how do you know if you're making the right decisions today? So that's where we're trying to educate people. We want to show people what the next 3 steps are, and we want to show people, what lies around the corner. Because if they do know how the story ends, if they do understand what the retirement strategy in 20 years from now is, it's going to actually influence them to make better decisions today. So I think a lot of what we do for people is shine a light into some of the corners of finances that most people aren't talking about, because what we don't want, and unfortunately, I would say most people are in this situation, we don't want people planning in the dark. We don't want people planning in the dark and then waking up 20 years later and saying, wait, I don't have enough money. We can make better decisions today if we know the full story. It's like, imagine having the answers to the exam before you sit down. You're going to have a much better final score, that kind of mentality.
What would be an example of a retirement strategy?
So there are many. I think what we kind of focus in on at first to express, we're kind of not happy with how the industry handles this because we think it's very accumulation based, and then these large financial institutions just want to hold on to your money and give you back as little as possible. So there's a few, and I think I always like to base it from our perspective. What we want to do is create a system of guaranteed income as a base. Obviously, it shouldn't be all your money going to create that. I'm sure you've heard in the past people say, oh, people used to get pensions all the time. Well, that doesn't really exist, and now the 401k came about, and people have to do it themselves, which is really hard because there's just so many variables. So we kind of start with, if there is a pension, Social Security, maybe some sort of guaranteed income via an annuity. But again, you have to customize it to everyone. But I like that starting point because just imagine being 85 and having to look in, I always say the newspaper, which is silly because no one looks in the newspaper anymore. But imagine looking at the computer and saying, oh, I hope the bond market did good this year or this month so I can get my paycheck, because your expenses are not going away. Those are just coming and growing. So I like having that base of guaranteed income. And then on the side, still being able to invest aggressively, but also having liquidity. And again, considering the different threats, which are different in retirement as compared to when you're accumulating wealth. But I think mainstream planning is what their goal is. They're coming at you with, like, don't touch your money. Try to earn interest in a conservative fashion and just peel a little bit off. And people work so hard to build up all this wealth, and then they can't access it because they're just afraid that they'll run out of money or there'll be a bad market and then there'll be a snowball effect or a health issue that they need to dip into it. So I think a lot of other planners use what's called a Monte Carlo simulator. And I've literally had clients come in and they said, the reason I'm not with the other advisor, they figured it out on their own. They're like, because they said there was a 90% chance I won't run out of money. I'm like, well, that's not good enough. So we need a 100% chance or acceptable. I never really understood that approach or how anyone would be comfortable with it. And when they say run out of money, that means 90% chance is that they would die like at age 95 with $0 left in their bank account. That's what the Monte Carlo simulator is, like running out. I think people would change their strategy a few years before that when they see that there's not much money left. Do something, I don't know. So again, we need to make certain that the guaranteed base is there, which kind of allows our clients to still invest aggressively, to have money for inflation and health expenses, and also have the liquid bucket that's conservative.
Yeah, and it's not a cookie cutter strategy, right? It's understanding the client's vision and what they're trying to create, because everybody has extremely different goals. So it's really leading with their vision and then building the strategies to accomplish their vision. And with the Monte Carlo simulator comment, I've spoken to people about that ad nauseum before. And, a lot of the times the answer is, they're at 90% now, but you're going to make adjustments along the way. I think that's too risky when you're entering retirement, right? I always think of that submarine, what I think it was called the Titan, with the billionaires who didn't make it back. And they had like 7 different fail safes and they were going to make adjustments along the way and it didn't work out. Right. So I don't think that when you're ready to retire, which is such a monumentous moment in somebody's life, I don't think making changes along the way is really appropriate. Like, I know for at least myself, if I was going to be entering retirement, I would want to understand what that's going to look like before I jump out of the plane, right? I want to jump out of the plane with the parachute. I don't want to jump out of the plane and then try to like find the parachute on the way down. That seems a little more risky to me.
That would be my strategy. Live life really dangerously. I'll figure it out. It's life and death, so I'll be able to make it work. Well, I'm curious. I know that we've got probably about 10 minutes or so left here, and there are a couple of curiosities of mine, and in the interest of time, you can pick whichever feels the most aligned for you. We've spoken a little bit about flaws in mainstream financial advising approaches, and if there's anything else that we haven't discussed, maybe adding in there. And then I'm also curious about, we started from maybe ground up and mastering the basics, which I think that could get us probably, I don't know what percent you would attribute to it, but it can get us a lot of the way there. But I love, Mark, the way that you speak to some of the more complex and you're really, I look at you as one of the top thinkers in this way. Like you're looking beyond just the basics, as important as they are. And so either one of those paths.
Yeah, I would start with one more thing about the mainstream.
Sure.
I think, and I hope any advisors that are watching this take this to heart, because I think most people get into a certain position, and I don't think anyone's ill-willed or trying to do it this way. But what naturally happens is they get hired by a company. The company has products. Then there's a strategy within those products, and they hope that it meets the client's vision, and every client's cookie cutter, and it's going to hit that vision. What I would stress is, why don't we start with the vision of the client and just flip this upside down, then focus on a strategy. Then, of course, there will be products that suit that, right? We have to be very holistic. I think that's something that we really shine with. So whatever's customized in products fit, and then we have the ability to figure out what company is best for each one. I think that's such an important component, and I hope that's how most advisors are thinking it through, because it's a lot of just listening and figuring out what the goals are. Yeah, there are some philosophical things that we need to make certain that, like we talked about cash flow, like obviously everyone needs to have cash flow, but there's other goals and action items along the way. So that's what I would say about the mainstream.
I think that's the difference of being client-centric versus company-centric, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then
if you could speak to just maybe, we did a lot of the basics and mastering the basics and a ground-up approach, and maybe some of the more, give us a little taste of something that's more complex and that you're studying.
So, and this kind of ties into the other question as well, is what we usually see from the company-driven type planning that we see is it's a basic stock and bond portfolio. And everyone kind of stops there. They think that's it. And then so something that we love to bring to the table for our clients is maybe in the alternative investing space. I just think, again, back to the holistic, we need to know all the tools out there. And so you never want to work with someone that just has one focus. So I think, that's a space that we're really enjoying right now is the alternative investments, private equity, private credit. What else would you add to that, Zach?
Maybe you want to speak a little bit more deeply about the private equity side as well.
Sure. So there's a whole other world to investing, and I think that's the future of where the markets are headed. And so obviously we do start with public. We're not saying people shouldn't be in the public stock market, but we do start there from a diversification level. I think a lot of people, when you look in their 401k, they have these target date funds, and the target date funds, it's just easy, so people sign up for them. But if you really break it down, it's mostly large cap stocks. And so right there out of the gate, there needs to be some adjusting, right? So our goal is we always have an emphasis and the thought process on how can we decrease risk and increase return probability, right? So right there, like right out of the gate, almost everybody's missing exposure to small cap stocks, for example. And historically, small cap has outperformed large cap. There's a lot of recency bias, which we run into because it's very emotional financial work. So recently, large cap has outperformed small cap. And on any given year, maybe the odds are 51% chance that you'll outperform with the small versus the large. But as you expand the time frame, that percent gets larger and larger. So we're not saying dump all your large cap stocks and get all small cap stocks. But if you have the diversification, and that's just one example, there's other intricacies to this. But, so those are little tips. So that's the public market. And then moving into the private space, so there's been a trend for a while now that public companies have not been on the rise in America. And so in about 2017, private companies actually surpassed public. There's more private companies now than public. And I think that trend is going to continue. And the reasons that I have are that there's a lot less regulation when you're a private company. And nowadays it's easier to get funding, so they could stay private for longer. And it used to not be the case, but now that's happening more and more.
And I'll also just add that explanation that Mark just gave of public markets versus private markets. As a reminder, the name of this podcast is The Other Side of the Coin. And that's just one example of many on why we wanted to start having these kinds of conversations, because in our world, most people, your average person and above, they're really only looking at one side of this equation. And when you can see the full scope of what's possible, there's just so much more opportunities and possibilities for somebody to achieve their goals and milestones. And people just aren't seeing the full picture. Imagine playing a game, right? A sports game or a board game. Imagine playing a game and not being able to see the whole board, right? Or seeing the whole field. So that was kind of like the precipice of what got the idea of us creating a podcast started.
And something else completely different, and I also want to give a shout out to one of our other partners, Andy Lavoie. He's heading up these alternative investments for us. But when we speak holistic, it's not just, we keep saying it's not just rate of return. Something else that we're doing for our clients a lot now, talking about this, is 1031 exchanges. So if someone's selling a rental property, even as a backstop, so a lot of times these deals fall through when you sell a property. We're able to shift them into it would be hands off, so it'd be passive. But we can at least get them to keep that step up in tax basis for their heirs or for themselves throughout time. And so just another thing that we're adding, that we've added for our clients, just looking at full picture. It could still kick off come to our clients. A lot of advantages. I know your parents, Mike, are in the real estate world, so you could talk to them about that. But so it just never stops. The amount of things that we want to bring to the table, the introductions we have, our universe, we just want to share with our world, our clients, and just do the right thing by everyone. I guess I know. In closing, I think that I know you might have a couple more questions, but just the culture is so important. And what we have here is our team. And we talk about our partners a little bit, and we know our culture. We know we're going to succeed. Every client that we have is also like forming a little team. And so I think it's important when choosing an advisor, we're not the right advisor for everyone, but just making certain that they're super holistic, that you can communicate with them and be open. But as soon as they start talking about just one thing, and this kind of ties to it because we're just kind of spouting out some of the different things that we do, that's what I would think about for anyone listening to really make certain that they have someone in their corner and has the client best interest at heart.
Awesome. Well, is there anything, guys, as we come towards a close here, is there anything that we haven't spoken about so far today that feels important to bring into the conversation now?
Nothing specific for me, just to always be learning, to have a growth mindset, to just keep, pushing the envelope on what's possible. Because I think if you look back a few decades from today, there's just so much more that we're capable of nowadays. And I always think about, what are the next 10 years going to look like? What are the next 20 years going to look like? So you don't want to stay stagnant. You want to, constantly kind of be ahead of the curve. I think it's just so important, especially in the game of finance, right?
And I would like to lean in a little bit more. I know we said it a couple of times already, that financial planning is not just what's the highest rate of return. So from our conversation today, if it was just what's the highest rate of return, everyone would put all of their money in private equity from today's conversation. That's not how you do planning. There has to be balance. There has to be hedging. There has to be liquidity. So again, not to be too repetitive, just the holistic nature of a plan and the strategy is the most important part.
Yeah, definitely a strategy, and also what the individual or the family or the business, what they're trying to achieve. Because there's something about money, and then there's also something called value-based goals. And actually maybe this is a good segue into the final question for Mark. It's not all about money though,
Well, before the final question, I have one more too, because I'm always curious of books. If people want to pique their appetite to learn a little bit more, if there's a book on strategy, Mark or Zach, that you would recommend for finances.
Well, last episode I mentioned as a foundational book, The Psychology of Money.
Yes.
So, Mark, I'm going to throw it to you for if you're thinking of any books on strategy.
Books on strategy, I think a recent book we came across, and this is geared towards the retirement aspect of planning, is Permission to Spend. And I think we just came across that recently, and it's by a PhD. And basically, which we love, we always align with Nobel Prize winners, PhDs. We want the facts. And so I think he speaks our language a lot when it comes to retirement.
Awesome. All right. Now the final question, Mark. So what does it mean to you to be wealthy?
Wow. Great question.
Save the best for last.
So be wealthy. I mean, it's not just me. I think it's almost everyone I speak to. And it kind of boils down to what is the definition of retirement, which I think could be different for people, but it comes down to that financial freedom. And believe it or not, in today's world, people are not just running for the door to lay on the couch. It's more people are inspired to do great things and give back and passionate about work. So retirement to us is the financial freedom. When can you know and be comfortable that you don't have to work if you couldn't or don't want to? And so that to me is wealth. Other than, clearly, to me, you know me pretty well at this point. Just family is really, family, spending time with family. It's not even about money. Money does make things better. I'm a real believer that when you have wealth or money, good people are able to do more good things. And if the opposite, if you have someone with bad intentions, I think it gets worse. But I really believe it brings out people's true colors more. But yeah, I think wealth it's not having billions of dollars. To sum it up, it's being comfortable and knowing that you can have a paycheck forever.
Well, it's a great answer to it's a philosophical question, right? It's not just about dollars and cents. It's really just it's a different. In my other podcast, I ask what it means to live a meaningful life, and it's kind of a backdoor to the same thing, right? It's like what's most important to you? What does that mean? So, yeah, this was a really fun conversation, Mark. It was fun to there's so much more we could have explored, and that you have a breadth of knowledge and wisdom in this industry that you've been in for a handful of years now, and I love that you not only the amount that you know, but the amount that you're curious about it and that you want to continue to grow. And I've learned so much by being your clients, and it's really just a privilege to be able to host this show with you guys. So thank you, Mark, for joining today. Thank you, Zach, for joining again, and really appreciate both of you being here. Looking forward to many more of these conversations.
Yeah, thank you. And last thing I would add to anyone listening is that your other podcast is amazing also. And so I would recommend that they go do that. Just such a big fan of you, and just so happy we're getting to know you better and better every day, every year.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us here.
Recent guest on Mike's podcast, Seth Godin, doing big things over there. Very impressive.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for multiple plugs in this conversation. You guys are you're truly the best. And thank you all for listening or watching if you're watching on YouTube. And take care. Stay tuned for the next one.
Take care.
Take care, everybody. Hi, everybody. This is Zach Smith, co-founder and CEO of I Am Financial and the co-host of The Other Side of the Coin. Please remember to subscribe and like. And if you have any questions and or would like to speak, please feel free to email me directly at zacksmith@im-financial.com. That is ZAK Smith at the letter I, the letter M-financial.com. Reach out to us and we will make certain to get you to the appropriate channels. Thank you again, and we hope you enjoyed our show. See you next time. Disclosures. This podcast is for informational purpose only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although the information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. guest speakers and the firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Park Avenue Securities, Guardian, Northeast Financial Network, and IM Financial, and the opinions stated are their own. Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Consult your tax, legal, and accounting professional regarding your individual situation. All investments and investment strategies contain risk and may lose value. OSJ address is 101 Crawford's Corner Road, Suite 2405 in Homedale, New Jersey, 07733. Their phone number is 908-709-0020. Our phone number is 914-603-8325. A member of the Northeast Financial Network, financial representative with Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, New York, New York, IM Financial, and Northeast Financial Network are not affiliates or subsidiaries of Guardian. Arkansas license number 16303-838, California license number 4108463.